Let me check with y'all right now. Are you seeing Arkansas in action, the legislature, the PowerPoint, the first screen? Okay. Okay, I think I'm going to go ahead and get started if y'all don't mind, and then I'll just watch for folks to come on board. But let's just go ahead and get this show on the road to conserve your time. And so basically, I want to just start out just to kind of remind you that we are the Arkansas Civic Action Network. Dr. Gail Choate and I formed this nonprofit back in the summer. And our focus is strong, vibrant communities, facilitating the growth of citizens on their journey toward full civic participation. We want to make sure that we equip citizens with the tools and skills and the content and the information they need to make their voice heard, because we think it's more important than ever in our country's history for people to have a voice. And Arkansas certainly is, the state motto is Regnat Populus, which is the people rule. And the legislature, the three branches of government, are there to serve the people. And sometimes they forget that. There are certain ones in all positions from time to time that lose kind of track of the fact that they serve at our discretion. We have a lot of input, but we don't always exercise that input, and that's really why we're here. So we want to facilitate this process and make it easier for folks to feel like they're part of the decision making, because indeed on some level they are. Shannon, let's see, who was it? I can't see when I'm doing the PowerPoint. I don't have a screen to where I can actually see who's come in, but I think we just admitted another one, and welcome. Also, it shows up many places. In our Constitution, all political power is inherent in the people, and government is instituted for their protection, security, and benefit. They have the right to alter, reform, or abolish the same in such manner as they may think proper. So it's inherent in our Constitution. We have a thing called direct democracy in Arkansas that was instituted by a gubernatorial candidate back about the turn of the first century of our history, and that gives us the right to even pass laws without having to go through the legislature. Now, I'll tell you that as we move into this workshop, that is being challenged at this point. Our legislature, there's certain legislators that believe that process is too accessible to the people, and they're working hard to make it more difficult. But nonetheless, we still have direct democracy in Arkansas, and that's a great thing, because it gives the people an opportunity to collect signatures and pass laws themselves. So we're excited about that fact that it still exists, and we're watching that closely. We are working closely with several organizations. ACLU is helping us tonight. I have a great relationship with them. For Our People, it's another group that will be on one of the sessions. Get Loud Arkansas is certainly one of the more foremost groups in Arkansas that's working on getting people registered to vote and following up on that. The Public Policy Center at the UA Division of Agriculture is helping us as well. They track bills, and they do quite a bit of lobbying, legislative policy making. Stand Up Arkansas, kind of a sister organization of ours that we're very close to, that is also working hard to bring information to folks in Arkansas. And then the University of Arkansas Little Rock Downtown has been instrumental in providing the facility downtown for the in-person meetings. So we wanted to acknowledge those groups that are working closely with us. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Remember, we're here because we have something to contribute, and everybody has something to say. Listen to learn, but I don't want you to discourage you from speaking. I certainly want you to speak up, share ideas and thoughts, but we're here not necessarily to persuade anyone. We're actually here just to share information, but we certainly want to encourage you to be a part of that. We want to move through this efficiently, but we don't want to go so fast as to skip over things that you need for clarification. So slow us down if you need to, and don't hesitate to stop us and ask questions. Certainly one of our norms is to criticize ideas but not people. You'll find as you begin to work more, and probably some of you already have done quite a bit in advocacy work already, and you realize that we actually learn a lot, we accomplish a lot more when we're able to separate ideas from people, and we end up not being critical of people, but the ideas that they're expressing. Avoid assumptions about people and groups. Don't expect people to speak for their group, their perceived social group in this interaction. Speak one at a time, and certainly raise your hand if you need to be recognized. I'll try to watch that closely and try to keep us on track, but also make sure we don't pass over anyone's needs. So we'll be moving right along. A quick review from week one, just a reminder that we are a bicameral legislature. Most states have a bicameral legislature, not all of them, but most of them. I think one has a single. The bicameral means we have a Senate and a House of Representatives. That structure and authority is set up in a way that actually, it's a shared responsibility. Committees are actually the first. I think you're right, Amber. I believe that's true. And there's also the committees. Those of us that have done lobbying and have been advocates at times for organizations, have learned that if you've got a bad bill or a good bill, the place to really go and really support it or fight it is in the committee. Because if you can stop a bad bill in committee and it never gets to the House floor, you can prevent a lot of bad legislation from getting really put on us. Joint committees, Gail felt from the first session there were questions about joint committees, and there are. I'll give you an example. In this, when the legislature is not in session. There is the two education committees, for instance, the Senate and House education committees form a committee that's called the Joint Education Committee, and what they really are responsible for is meetings that take place mostly in the summer, where they look at the adequacy study that was used back years ago to settle the Lakeview case when. We had a real imbalance in the funding formula for education for schools in Arkansas. We actually had schools, smaller schools and rural schools that filed suit claiming that the formula was not fair, and it certainly was not. And the courts intervened, and it took a while to settle it. But the adequacy study was the way that they resolved that issue and managed to get out of court and establish a new formula and a new process for figuring out how to do a matrix that would actually drive funding of education and justify the different expenditures in different areas. And it's where things like isolated school funding and funding that was based on just very particulars about a district that would require it to have more funding than others. So the adequacy study was under the purview of the two education committees. So sometimes combined committees come together as joint committees. The ALC, the Legislative Council, is a good example of that, joint committees. It doesn't really process legislation, but it definitely argues and debates different points of legislation and provides a joint committee for that to happen. When you're in the process of advocating and you're in the process of trying to influence legislators, these two numbers are the ones to call, because legislators have told us, and we've learned over time, that one of the most effective ways to reach out is by telephone call. And when you make a phone call, often you won't get the legislator, but what happens is a note is taken, it's put on a little sticky note, and that is put on their phone or put on their desk. And if enough people call them about a bill and they walk into their office and they see this pile of notes attached to that bill, that's a pretty influential way to reach them. Of course, there's all kinds of ways. Emails are certainly effective as well, and of course, we'll get more into that even in the next session when it comes to the advocacy process itself. One thing to remember is that the way that the committees are chaired, the Speaker of the House, which is Representative Evans this time, and of course, the Republicans are in a majority, pretty much a super majority. He was voted as the House Speaker of the House, and then he appoints the committee chairs, and that's where the bills start. So when the bills get into those committees, the committee chairs are the ones who are deciding whether that bill is worthy of being debated or not, and when it's going to go. And that's becomes very significant information to know, and that's when a bill is going to be run. And you're going to learn tonight a lot about how to, if you don't already know, about how to know when those bills are coming up in committee and how to prepare to go and testify, or at least go and observe and pay attention to what is going on to keep up with the bills that you're interested in. Okay, so tonight what we're going to be working on is tracking legislation, following bills, and then preparing to attend sessions. What we want you to leave here is to be able to navigate the Arkansas General Assembly website along with other platforms to track legislation. I want you to be able to explain the stages of a bill's journey and identify opportunities for public input. And then hopefully you'll be able to confidently attend and observe committee meetings and legislative sessions. This is probably a good time to mention that on February 11th, I'll be taking a group of folks at the Capitol, meeting folks there at 9 in the morning. We'll attend a committee meeting that morning. We will have lunch in the Capitol cafeteria, and then in the afternoon we'll attend either one or both, depending on what you choose to do, or the attendees do, either a regular session of the Senate or the House, should they both be meeting, and they probably will on a Tuesday. So February 11th, if you're interested in going, be guiding folks through that process, and we'll have a great day and learn a lot and get a chance to see firsthand how the legislature operates. Okay, I'm going to stop at this point. I think you're already aware of these six. Cody, the committee, we're not really sure yet. I'm going to see, we don't know exactly what committees are definitely meeting that day yet. I'll be watching the agenda going forward on some of the tools that you're going to learn about tonight. And the week of the meeting, I will be reaching out to you when I see the agenda, and I'll let the participants know what our options are, and let those who have a preference tell us, because we'll all we could split up. I'd like us all to go to one meeting together so we can then talk about and process what we learned in that meeting, what we saw, the kind of things that I think we want to watch for, watching legislators, that kind of thing. Yeah, we'll get back to you on which committee before we actually meet that day.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so you know about these six. This is we're right there at tracking legislation, following bills, and attending sessions. We've got We've got these other 4 sessions and then the day at the Capitol, so there's still more to go. It's a cumulative information. It's a lot of information, but I think that if we keep plugging away at it, I feel like at the end of it, you're going to feel very confident expressing your constitutional privilege, not privilege, but your constitutional right to be a part of the determination of laws and their development in your system. So I'm gonna stop at this point and see if y'all have any questions based on what I've just that quick kind of recapitulation of what was done last time. And if not, I'll move on. Well, I'd like to introduce to you Kevin Azanza. He's a community engagement director at at the ACLU Arkansas. He is and he's joined by Sarah Everett, who's our policy director there. I just have so much admiration for the work these folks have done because they've really worked hard to protect the rights of individuals and groups that may not have anyone else actually working to support them. And we're really excited at the Arkansas Civic Action Network to have a relationship with ACLU and some of these other great C3s that are out there engaged and involved in the process in Arkansas. So without any further ado, I'm going to get out of the way and turn it over to Sarah and Kevin, see if we can't get their screen shared here, and we'll go from there.
All right, let's see. Okay. So, as Davis said, I'm Sarah Everett. I'm the policy director at the ACLU of Arkansas. I've been here 7 years. I've worked, I'll say 3.5 regular sessions since then. And I told people last week I may have become a little bit jaded. I love this stuff. I'm a poli sci nerd, and also it's emotionally exhausting. But I really try not to, let that through this presentation. So just keep that in mind if I say anything, well, jaded. And we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, but we also have very specific values. And so I also will try not to push any agenda in this presentation, but I haven't practiced that a whole lot. So we'll see how it goes. Um, Kevin.
Hey y'all, as mentioned before, my name is Kevin Azanza. Pronouns he, him. I am the community engagement director for the ACLU Arkansas. I've been here for a little bit over 2 years. This would be my second legislative session that I'm doing. I don't know how many that is in dog years, but I think it's too many because legislative session is a lot. With that being said, I would just want to, before we start, want to say thank you guys for being here. Any questions that you guys have, please put them in the chat. I'll be answering them there, and also we can stop and answer them here in live if you guys would like to do that as well. I think this is going to be a good chat, super interactive. So any questions you have, please let us know. I think other than that, I think we're going to give a quick overview, which is just the importance of tracking bills, bill tracking tools, tracking a bill and its key components, agenda meetings and calendars for the legislative session, engaging with representatives and why that matters, and ultimately why your voice matters. So that's a little bit of an overview about what we're going to be doing here. I think with that, we're ready to go to the next slide, right, Sarah? Thank you. So, introduction. Why is it important to track a bill? So there's a couple different reasons. One is to know when you can testify in committee. And it can also be to know when a bill is coming up. and which representatives you want to speak to about your concerns. You can speak to all of them. However, the ones that the committee it goes to, those are probably the ones you want to speak to first, and then go to your next rep. After that, I'm going to give it over to Sarah so she can give a quick overview of the legislative process.
Yeah, I don't want to go over too much if you all have heard all of this before, but I just wanted to at least give a brief overview so we're on the same page as far as the process. Bills can be introduced in the House or the Senate. It starts in committee. So let's say a bill is introduced in the House. It gets referred to a House committee, and in usually it's supposed to be referred to a committee that deals with the subject matter of the bill. So if it's a bill about public schools, it's probably going to go to the Education Committee. And so it starts in that committee. The if the committee passes it or recommends to pass it, it goes to the House floor. And if the House passes the bill, it goes to the Senate and does the same process there. If a bill is amended, it has to, the amendment has to be approved by committee too. So sometimes a bill will go through one house, be amended in the next house, and have to go back to the original house for the amendment to be approved, if that makes sense. So we can get a little messy, I guess, sometimes. But both the House and Senate have to pass identical forms of the bill before it can go to the governor to be signed. Um,
Yeah, so there's a few things that can happen with a bill. A bill can pass, a bill can die in committee, a bill can be amended, it can also enter into interim study, and it could die at the end of session. So there's quite a few things that can happen, and we're going to talk about that a little bit further. But that sh shows the importance of why it's important to tracking a bill. So we're going to go ahead and talk about bill tracking tools. Here are a couple things on that slide. There was a couple tools, but one that we recommend is the state legislature website. And so I'm gonna hand over to Sarah so she can see a little bit, um, so she can show us a little bit more about how to bill track through the Arkansas state legislature website.
yeah, so this is the direct source. It's free. And so I just want to make sure everyone has enough familiarity to be able to navigate the site if you haven't used it yourself. Um, so ArcLeg, let's see, I can't see the URL from here. What I usually do is just type ArcLeg into Google and then it's usually the first result. So if you forget the URL, that's okay. So here we can search for bills. See, there's these all these tabs across the top. And bills is one of those. And if you go to advanced search, then you can search for bills in any General Assembly going all the way back to 1988. Uh, I have not tested that, but um, they are there. You can search by act number, you can search by bill number, by sponsor, or you can search by keyword, which we often do when we are looking for specific bills. Now, if you just search education, you're likely to get 100 bills. So if you are looking for something very specific, it helps to think about, what word might be unique in that bill. Um, and then you want to choose over here on the left side, you want to choose the session that you're searching. I mean, you can search all, but I'm usually searching in a specific session. So right now is the regular session of 2025. And I will search, since it was up in committee today, SB3 by bill number, and it takes you to it takes you to the search page and you click on the bill number, and this is the information page for the bill. Uh, if you're not familiar with SB3, it is a bill that would ban affirmative action and DEI initiatives in state agencies and public schools in Arkansas. So here you can see when the bill was introduced, you can see who's sponsoring the bill, and you can see where it is right now. So today, as you can see, it was returned by the committee with the recommendation that it do pass, which means the committee voted to pass the bill. And as you can see here, it was in state agencies. So its next action will be on the House floor, unless it gets amended or something like that. I'm also going to show you, while we're on this site, how you can do personalized bill tracking. So I think you can do this from any bills page, but over on the right-hand side of the page, there are several options. One of them is personalized bill tracking. So if you click that, oh, that's right. Let's see if I remember oh, good. So you do have to create a login, which I have done. It's not hard, and they don't ask for a bunch of information. Oh, right, I have to allow cookies. Um, there we go. So these are bills that I have tracked myself. You can, I'll show you how to add a bill in a minute, but this is where they will all show up. And I just wanted to point out that you can label them, so you can choose topics for your bills. I have, well, criminal justice, education, elections, and you can also put your own notes, write your own notes about the bill because well, sometimes the bill number won't mean anything to you. If you track enough bills, you might forget. And sometimes the titles are not that descriptive either. So um, this also on the right-hand side under bill tracking, if you go to settings, nope. Well, we can do this too. If you go to settings, you can opt to get daily report emails. So it will email you every day with updates about the bills that you're tracking. And if you want to add a bill to track, you click Add Bill under Bill Tracking, and then you'll have to know the bill number, so you may have to go find it first. I'm just gonna do House Bill 1002 and say, well, I don't know what this bill does. Um, and when add a new group is where you would put your topic. So I'll make this topic unknown. And then you click track bill. Of course, I've already tracked that one. No, okay. So it's been added to your list. So you click go back to your list. Now we have under unknown two bills. Does anyone have questions about that process? I once again fumbled a little bit there, but hopefully it wasn't too muddy. Um, so
Cody,
as
Cody had a question about when the bill was going to run, SB3. And so maybe we can go back just real quick on that bill and see how you would know it runs tomorrow in the Senate.
oh yes. That's a so yes, it has a date, sorry, upcoming events on the bill's information page. Right, the 128, that's today. So it ran in committee today. And 129 is tomorrow, and it's in the Senate chamber. You can also find out what is on the floor of the Senate or what's on their calendar by going to the main page. This has the schedule for the week. So we scroll down to tomorrow and find Senate convenes. I believe, yes, you click on bills, and these are the bills that are up for consideration. Some of this language is confusing even to me. So there's amendments, and those have to be read on the floor before they're referred to committee. So these up here that say own bill or own amendment are not being, the bill themselves is not being voted on. Down here, bills for consideration are the bills that are supposedly going to be voted on and maybe passed tomorrow. So you can see SB3 is on the calendar for tomorrow. And you may know that public testimony can be heard in committee, but there is no public testimony when a bill is on the floor of the Senate. When it's up for a vote for the whole Senate, that's what we say. That's what I mean when we say it's on the floor. So the next time there will be opportunity for public comment will be in the House committee, assuming it passes in the Senate. It will usually it goes to the same committee, so it will probably be the House State Agencies Committee. And since that came up, maybe I'll just show you very quickly how to find committees at the top of the page. This should be on all the pages of the legislature's website. You see the committees tab, and we'll go to House and scroll down. There are many committees listed here. I usually don't do much with the subcommittees. I don't even honestly know how often they meet, but state agencies is down here. So you click on state agencies, and this shows the roster. So it shows all of the representatives who are on this committee. Jimmy Gazaway is the chair, and then there's a long list of others here. So I can't remember the number they have to get in a House committee to pass a bill, but uh, there are many more Republicans on every committee than there are Democrats. So that makes it, if it's a somewhat controversial bill and it's sponsored by a Republican, it's much more likely to be passed than if it's sponsored by a Democrat, if that makes sense. Um, I wanted to briefly, oh, are there any other questions? Kevin, let me know if they're in the chat because I can't see it.
Yeah, I'm watching chat.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, Amber has one question.
Hi, I'm not fast enough to type it out. Hopefully it makes sense, but recently there was a push, I believe, to have it so that Democrats cannot be the chairs of committees. Now, was that like a rule, or is that um something that's going to be passed, or has it passed? This can wait till the end if this isn't the right time to discuss.
No, it's perfect. Yes, so they've done something like this the last two sessions. Um, and it'll be, I believe this is in the House rules and the Senate rules. So they set their own rules at the beginning of session. That's almost always House Bill 1001 and Senate Bill 1 are the rules for the House and the Senate. It's very long. I do try to look at it at the beginning of the session just to see what's different. Usually not much substantial, but yes, the past two sessions they have I know they changed something last session and they made it more extreme this session. So yeah, there are no Democrats who are chairs or co-chairs, I believe, of any committee. I think
Yeah,
last session they could still be co-chairs.
yeah, that's true. They could be co-chairs, and they've also the very first last year's session they set it to where it could be more than two Democrats on any committee to ensure that they could never win a vote on that
Yeah.
committee
On the Senate, yes.
unless they convinced a substantial number of their cohorts on the other side of the aisle.
Yes. So Senate committees only have two Democrats. I don't remember if House committees have more because they're bigger committees. Um, but again, they're never going to be the majority.
So that's a rule that changes by year. That's not codified in law.
Well, yeah, I mean, they can change
Or it
it
is,
each
yeah.
year,
Okay.
but yeah, most of the time they don't change very much. And once they change something like this, I think they're unlikely to go back unless, you know, the makeup of the legislature changes significantly.
Thank you.
You are welcome. Okay. Any other questions? So I wanted to briefly touch on some of the other options for bill tracking. Um, I don't, I'm not paid to advertise any of these. I've signed up for these services just to see how they work. We actually use a different service called Tracker, but there is no free version of Tracker. So I've listed some of the more popular websites that do legislation tracking here, and these all have free versions. Plural, you can only track 5 bills. So I probably wouldn't even have included it if I had done much research first. But Legiscan, you have a limit of 50 bills, which is quite a few for, just a um, average person who's not paid to do this full time. And Fast Democracy actually has unlimited tracking, so you can track as many bills as you want. But um, Legiscan has some, Kevin, I can't remember all of them. Legiscan does have some advantages over Fast Democracy. There are some other options you can use. I think you can get weekly reports on bills from Legiscan that you can't get from Fast Democracy, for example. Um, and if we have time and people are interested, I can show you a little bit of how these websites work. I think Fast Democracy is pretty user friendly. And Tracker has lots of features, so it's a lot on the page. But they both have like YouTube videos that teach you how to use them and show you what features there are if you want or need that. I think I'll go to the next. If there aren't questions about this, I'll go to the next slide.
Yeah, and one quick thing to add on that one is Fast Democracy is the one that lets you have up to 10 users. If I'm not wrong, Sarah, is it Fast Democracy?
Yeah, I think I am trying to remember now if I looked that up and it wasn't a free something you could. I think it may not be something you can do on the free version. I think you may have to pay a little bit for that. Um,
I think
they
Amber has
also
a question.
okay.
Amber, do you have a question?
Uh,
Or did we get it?
Sorry, I do not. I had to step away and I must have pushed a button, so I apologize.
Oh,
I have a question.
sure.
So if like I have already started tracking a couple of bills on the state's website and I haven't gotten anything about them. So like because maybe a Democrat filed it, does it go to the bottom of the list for those committees kind of thing? Like how soon should I start seeing activity from a bill, for instance, about voter registration?
Yes, that is a good question. So, one thing, well, bills will, when they go to committee, they'll be put on the agenda, and this is a complicated thing too. Most committees will just put all of their bills on their agenda for every meeting. So you don't actually know when the bill is going to run. Sometimes they'll put it in an inactive section or deferred section, but for many, many years, I know that the legislature operated this way. They just, you didn't know. You didn't know when it was going to run. Sometimes even the sponsor would look around in the room, see who was there to testify, and decide whether or not they thought the bill had a good chance that day. There are too many people to testify against, they might not run the bill. I know this is not exactly your question, but
Love that. No, no, it is.
okay.
Okay,
Um,
awesome.
yes. So during COVID, so the 2021 session, they changed the rules to require everyone to every agenda had to be very specific about what bill was running each meeting. So I think then they had real like inactive sections on their agenda. Let me see if I have. Um, and There we go. So here's an agenda. So like you can see the regular agenda of this Judiciary Committee meeting has all of the bills on it. And sometimes they'll have this inactive section or deferred section. So during COVID, they had to say on the regular agenda, it could only be the bills that they were actually going to run. And mostly that was so like the public didn't show up en masse because they weren't sure what was going to run. Um, and then after they, I think it was, yeah, 2023, right? Some committees kept that. Many, maybe most committees went back to the old way of doing business. I think there's a little bit, I could be wrong. I think there's a little bit less of the looking around to see who is or isn't in the room kind of tactics. It still happens, but especially some of the chairs of committees, especially, are less likely to, if someone has said, I'm going to run this bill today, they're less likely to turn away people who have come, especially from miles away, to testify. But how we usually try to find out when a bill is running, we ask the sponsor. If we don't have a good relationship with the sponsor, we usually have relationships with at least one person on the committee who can give us a heads up when a bill is going to run. So you can ask, I would say you can ask the sponsor. I as a citizen, they may be less likely to answer our questions than just the average person's. Um, but you can also ask the chair of the committee what bills they plan to run. They they don't always know if the sponsor will be ready, but
Well, so can they just
oh,
ignore a bill that's been filed, kind of thing, like through the
yes,
entire
sorry.
session, or are they required to eventually get to it?
Yes. So really it's up to the sponsor to actually run the bill. And there are many bills that get filed. Um, I want to say especially by Democrats, but it may be both sides that are really just statements. They want this to be on record. I mean, they would like for it to pass, obviously, but they maybe they know it's not going to, and so they just want this bill filed. But
Sometimes, can I
go
interject
ahead.
something there,
Yeah.
Sarah? Sometimes they will, if they don't think they can pass the bill, they will they'll rewrite it as an interim study, and they'll get it passed out of committee and then to the floor as an interim study to at least keep the idea alive going forward. But yeah, sometimes, at the end of a session, there's any number of bills that just kind of end up in the deferred batch at the bottom and they don't ever get really dealt with. But they will. Then I've also seen them go to deferred and you think they're gone forever and they come back with very little change and they get voted in. It's just,
Yeah.
it's incredible to watch the process happen, but it's kind of up to the sponsor to keep fighting to keep the bill. I have seen chairs of committees, though, get in the way of bills that they didn't want and put them way to the bottom of the list. And when you run out of time at the end of the session, if that bill never got its second reading and never got its second shot in the committee, it ends up just dying. And that can be determined by the chair of the committee for sure.
Yeah. So, I would suggest if you
Thank y'all.
have if you have bills that you're really interested in, especially if they're sponsored by a Democrat, um, they may actually let you know if they're going to run the bill. I say again, okay, this is obviously the jaded part of me coming out. There are definitely Republicans who are approachable and willing to talk to you about things. SB3 might be one of those bills that you may not get a lot of information about from Senator Sullivan, partly because he gave a lot of information out last session and then his bill didn't pass. But I know Representative Collins, for example, filed a lot of basically the entire House Democratic Caucus's agenda. He filed all of those bills, and he does not necessarily have a plan for who's going to run those bills or when they will run. Doesn't mean they're not going to. I think it was just a strategic move. It was the same day that the caucus had their press conference. So he wanted to get all those bills filed.
There's another thing that happens too, and they file a lot of bills called shell bills, and all they are is just the title of the bill, and there's no content in the bill, and that's to get it in by the filing date so that they have it in there, even though there's no content, and then they go back and start filling in the information later. Those we call shell bills, and a lot of those get filed too.
Yes, you will see some of those. I think it was today. Today was the deadline for bills related to insurance. Um, And so I only found one because I don't usually read all of the insurance bills. But there was one you might notice by Representative Pilkington. It's called the Momnibus Act. And it's supposed to deal with maternal health. So I clicked on it to read it, and there was no text. So that is a great example of a shell bill. Um, they file it because they know or they think they have something related to the title that they want to file on the filing deadline for constitutional amendments. There will be a bunch of shell bills, and most of them will never get filled out. In theory, well, by rule, they're supposed to keep the amendment. So when they actually add text, it is supposed to be related to what the title says. Now, if they feel like they need to fudge it, they will. They certainly have in the past, but it is supposed to be, that bill will have to be about maternal health care, which is a pretty broad topic, but um, I know I skipped over a slide, Kevin.
No, you're good, Sarah. We can go back to that slide if you want, or we can move
Yeah, let's
forward
see if
too.
oh, hey, there we go. So,
Um,
um, okay, these are some of the most common, like statuses, bill statuses you'll see. Um, I, there are many that I just don't pay attention to. First reading, second reading, third reading. So a bill has to be read 3 times before it can be voted on in the House or the Senate. And no, they're not actually reading the entire bill. What they do is read the bill title, and that counts as a reading. So they'll do the first reading and now I'm gonna forget the order. They either do the first and second and refer it to committee, or they do the first and then refer it to committee. And then when it's passed by committee, it gets second and third readings. It's something like that. Um, But so that I think the language we saw earlier it was long, but recommend do pass essentially is what the bill will say when it comes out of committee, um, having been voted on positively. Um, and like Davis mentioned, there are also some that are referred for interim study, which some people will tell you is will where bills go to die. But it can be very useful. Legislators have access to the Bureau of Legislative Research, among other things, and they can actually get a lot of information. They can get research done, essentially, on issues that they care about. I know Representative Collins has done this for several different issues. He did a study on cash bail, I believe, a few years ago, and he presented that research to the House Judiciary Committee in the interim, which is between regular sessions. So the committees do meet maybe quarterly, maybe monthly, between sessions, and that's when they deal with the interim study type bills. And and in theory, that would help the bill next session um, pass. But sometimes, sometimes that doesn't work either.
Kathy, those are all good points there. It might be helpful to go and check out a bill and see what it means when a bill's underlined and
Oh yeah.
italicized and all that good stuff.
Yes, thank you.
Hmm.
Um, Maybe we'll go back to SB3 since uh okay. So I guess I didn't even show you this or when you're on the bill's information page, if you want to read the bill itself, you click on this PDF up here by the bill number on the top left. And it opens the PDF, and this is what all bills look like. It has the sponsors on the top left, and then the title, and then the language of the bill. So anything that is underlined is new language to be added to state law. Anything that is crossed out, like here on line 33, that is language that is in state law and is being removed. So in this bill, he's replacing these two lines to say that the Alcoholic Beverage Control Division shall consider the benefit of competition to consumers instead of diversity and in ownership. Um, and so all of the language that is neither underlined nor crossed out is language that's already in state law and will stay in state law even when this bill passes. So does that make sense? Let me see. I I don't think there's a good way to see it on this bill. If a bill has language that's in italics, that is language that has been amended to be added to the bill. Um, if that makes sense. Maybe I can uh find an example of that.
Hey, Amber, where are you seeing that? Amber just had a question that says, "What is do not codify?"
Oh, yes. No, good question. So,
Section 1, yep.
yes. Um, Occasionally they will have something like this. So this is legislative intent. This does not go into, so when you, for example, okay, right here, Arkansas Code 434223. That's the reference to the code or the statute. So you can use that and go look up the current law that's in that section. So this part right here is not going in the state code. It is law, but it's not like meant to be carried out. It's just the legislative intent, which sometimes is used by courts to interpret laws. Sometimes is really just space for the sponsor to make a statement. Um, and then um, I don't know if this bill has an emergency clause. Sorry about the scrolling. No, it does not. So sometimes at the very end of a bill, there will be, it usually also says do not codify, and it's the emergency clause. Um, and I don't know if you may have heard about this last session. There was some controversy over their use of emergency clauses. They they use emergency clauses a lot, and sometimes it's hard to see what the emergency is. But the difference is if a bill has an emergency clause, it goes into effect immediately after the governor signs it. Otherwise, a bill without an emergency clause, it goes into effect 90 days after the legislature ends. So usually July or August. Most of the budget bills will have emergency clauses just because agencies need to be funded more quickly than that. But sometimes there will be emergency clauses for bills that, I mean, this is the way this may be that jaded part of me again, but sometimes it's things that they just want to go into effect very quickly, maybe to avoid someone going to court and stopping it. Maybe they just think it's very important and needs to be enacted immediately. Um, I think most of the time you can see why there might be an emergency, and it's not emergency the way we think of it, calling 911, but it's like this is just something that's a problem and it needs to be fixed sooner rather than later. Any other questions about bill language? Yeah.
I do have a question. So if I read through House Bill 1035, and as someone who has the voter registration form memorized, I already know that what they're proposing, like something in there is not right. Like it needs a little addition, or a, correction. How do you go about telling the sponsor that thing?
I love that. Um, yeah, so um well, I mean, I would say I guess it depends on how you're able to. If you can come to the Capitol, that's great. But most legislators will respond pretty well to email or phone calls. Now, I think I wanted to show you too how to see uh, legislators' contact information. So on the state website, you go to legislators. I usually just go to list all and find the one I'm looking for. Um, just they will see. Okay, Representative Acker doesn't have a phone number listed yet. He does have. Everyone has a House or Senate email address. Some of them will list their personal email address on this site. Some of them will list their House email address on this site, even if they never check it. Um, So you may want to do both call and email. If they don't have a phone number or if they don't answer the phone number that's listed, you can call the in-house phone line, which was, I know it was on his first slide. I think it's on one of our slides too. Um, but it's also, okay, uh, up here on the top right. There are options like House and Senate. So those take you to the House website and the Senate website. And the contact information for both of those is also on their websites. So if you call the in-session phone line, at least during office hours, they will take a message for you. And they, as I think Davis talked about this earlier, they'll write it down and leave it on the representative or the senator's desk. So you could call, I don't, is it Representative Collins who sponsored that? Sorry.
Yeah, it sure is.
Yeah, and he is very responsive. And I think the phone number that's listed for him on his bio, he even answers that. But Yeah, you could call him and talk to him about it, or you could email him and point it if it's easier to do it in writing.
Right.
You could do that too. Um,
Awesome. I also want to help it get it over the finish line. Like I
yes.
don't want to just call with
Yeah.
suggestions.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Yeah. Well, and yes. And so I will say we always encourage people to call legislators representatives um when they're opposed to a bill. We tend to do a lot more defensive work, just because of where our values stand and the state that we live in. We tend to want to kill bills rather than get them passed. I mean, we there are plenty of bills we want passed. We just tend to have better luck on the other side. So I can't remember where I was going with that. But oh yes. So we, like I said, we encourage people to call when they're opposed to a bill. We try to encourage people to call when they support a bill too. And one thing that I don't think some of our representatives get enough of is that like positive feedback. Um, so I think it helps for them to hear that, and if especially if you have like a personal story or some way that this would help you or help community that's maybe a unique perspective, or just maybe not the way a lawyer would represent it. Either you can send that to the representative and they may, if with your permission, they may read it in either on the floor or in committee, or they may ask you if you can come testify. Um, and then, if they want you to testify, then they'll actually tell you when they're gonna run the bill. Um, yes. I will say sometimes I like to use mistakes in a bill to try to kill the bill too, but I probably wouldn't do that with Representative Collins' bills. Okay. I'm sure I've gotten off track here, but Kevin.
No, I think these are good questions and good points. Amber asked, do you encourage people to start with their own reps first? And Davis had said yes. But not necessarily it has to stop there. You can also reach out to your reps and ask them if they know anyone that's actually going to be on the committee, and connect you with that person or a rep that may be more interested in that issue. So you can start with your rep, but it doesn't have to be just limited to your rep. And I will say, a lot of people think that you have to have some kind of special invitation to come to the Capitol, and that's totally not true. Anyone and everyone's welcome to the Capitol. So if you ever are in Little Rock and there's a bill that you want to talk and testify or even meet your committee rep about, if you reach out to them, sometimes they do tend to make time aside to speak to you and speak about the bill. So there's that good information.
Yeah. And I know testifying in committee is important. We also like to tell people that most, many or most legislators know exactly how they're going to vote when they walk into the committee room. So testimony does not always sway those votes. It has, certainly, but I think at least as important is the feedback and conversations representatives have before committee. I think it's really important to get your opinions to them before they walk into that room. And so, yes, I would always contact, I think, my representative or senator about a bill that I support or don't support. Um, and then we always also look to the committee that the bill has been submitted to. And it is true that many legislators are going to take feedback maybe more from their own constituents. But that does not mean that you should not call, legislators who aren't your district or whatever. I think it's important to give feedback, especially if they're on the committee. But you may be able to get, like Kevin said, like inside information or whatever from your legislator if you ask them about a specific bill that you care about, even if they aren't on that committee.
You can add something to that, Sarah.
Yeah,
Um,
please.
yeah, I used to do quite a bit of just advocacy, which was basically lobbying for a nonprofit in education. And when we often have testified on different education bills, and what we learned to do is get the information that we're going to share in our testimony to the committee members before that committee, hopefully a day or two before that's going to happen. If we can see the agenda a couple of days out, then we go ahead and send the information a couple of days out, and then we always bring a hard copy written of what we're sharing with them and passing that out as well. So they have no excuse for not knowing what we're getting ready to say. And then always kind of plan, if you're going to testify, think in terms of 3 to 5 minutes. Probably the emphasis on the three end of it, because it just depends on the controversial nature of the bill, if it's controversial or not, and how many people there to speak. If there's a bunch of people there to speak on the bill, they're going to probably limit comments to 3 minutes. I've seen that over and over and over. So you've got to get your elevator speech together. You've got to get it written in a way that you say exactly, communicate exactly what you want to get done without going into a long story. Yes, definitely. If you can personally anecdote what you're saying with some personal story that illustrates the need for what you're sharing, that's important, but you've really got to get it done in a reasonable amount of time. You can't get up there. I've seen too many times people had great things to say and they got all emotionally wound up in what they were going to say, and they're telling this story, and then the speaker cuts them off before they ever get a chance to put the punchline in there and say what they want to say. So just a couple of tips from the standpoint of testimony if you're going to.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, generally, when you go to testify, you don't necessarily have a time limit. I mean, probably if you stepped up to give a sermon, they cut you off eventually. But I believe today, I didn't watch the beginning, but I think they asked for a time limit when SB3 was heard today. I don't know. Ours, when it happens when we're there, it's often 2 minutes per person, per speaker. So I say always be prepared to like have your speech the way you want to say it and do try to make it succinct. But be prepared with a 2 minute version of that just in case. And sometimes they will limit debate to 15 minutes per side. So all of the people who want to speak for a bill get 15 minutes. All of the people who want to speak against a bill get 15 minutes. And I've seen at least once or twice where many people are signed up to speak for a bill and one or two people get up there and take up the entire 15 minutes. So yeah, be thinking about that too. That's less common than the, 2 or 3 minutes, but it certainly happens. I think it happened today. There were quite a few people who spoke on SB3. Um,
Yeah,
Kevin,
I
what am
think
I missing? Or other
I think you're
questions?
no, I am just talking to Amber. Uh, so she one question she did say is, what does it mean on a bill whenever they say read the first time, rule suspended? Um,
Yes, so now we're getting into parliamentary procedure, which I know a little bit of, but they have a parliamentarian on staff just to clear up issues like this. I mean, that's not usually an issue, that's common, but so they I think I said earlier they have to read a bill 3 times. I Davis, you might know this. I think when they read the bill the first time, I could be wrong. In my head, only reading the title of the bill instead of reading the entire bill was what was the rule they're suspending. Okay. Davis is nodding. I think that's that. I mean, there are many different ways rules can be suspended. You may see I think when they do an emergency clause vote, they suspend the rules. There there are different uh rules for different types of bills too. Like a constitutional amendment requires more than a majority vote. The emergency clause requires what I think a two-thirds vote to pass an emergency clause. So it depends on what you're seeing, but the first time rules suspended, I think, is just that they are reading the title instead of, the entire text of the bill.
That's commonly where you see that. It's just they don't have to read the whole bill like from the well or in the committee meeting, but that usually starts happening when they're in the well with the full House and the full Senate.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to note that rules get suspended as we go further along in the legislative session. So just trying to squeeze in some bills right before deadlines or session ending altogether, there is a tendency to try to rush things through super last minute, and so there's more votes or more times that suspension of rules come up into play. Um, and so you'll see that more often as the session goes on, and typically more during the very end.
Yes, I think I forgot to say that. So, when a bill is referred to committee, the rule is it has to be, um, they have to wait 24 hours from when it was referred to committee to when they can hear it in committee. So you're almost never going to see them run a bill in committee the same day it was filed, for example. And then um, also has to be on the agenda the night before it runs in committee. These are the types of rules that they might start suspending toward the end of session. I mean, they certainly do it. I think it happens with some of the more controversial bills. But I don't think they do it a lot. Sometimes they just make the mistake of I don't know, going a little too slowly at the beginning of session, so they're in such a rush toward the end. But I think usually even at the end they are working. I mean they'll go to midnight a lot at the end of session, but usually they're staying within those rules, but not always. They can suspend the rules for that too. I wanted to see how many people know who their state representative is. Yeah, I can't even see everyone, I don't think. Um, how many people know who their state senator is? All right. Well, just in case, I wanted to quickly, well, the easy way. On the state website, I actually hadn't used this function until a couple days ago. But if you hover over the legislators tab on the top left and click on District Finder, it takes you to a different web page, so it's not part of the state site. Sorry, my dogs are playing in the background. If they're making noise, I apologize. Um, So I like this because you can hover over the districts and see, who's representing different parts of the state. And this is the Senate, so you can click House. No, I don't. Like I said, I hadn't used this until a couple days ago. But what the easier way to do it is well, hmm, I'll use our office address. Uh Type in your address and it shows you your state senator, your state representative, and then what county and what school district you're in. And then you can go back to the state website and you can search for your own legislator here, or you can look at the full list. also wanted to show you, you can search for bills by sponsor. You can also look, if you're curious about what your representative or senator is doing, you can look at their page on the website and it will list the bills that they are primary sponsor for and the bills that they've co-sponsored. A lot of times, there will be, a list of 18 co-sponsors. So it doesn't necessarily mean they had anything to do with the bill. They just let someone put their name on it. They usually only do that if they support the bill, but I usually pay more attention to the bills that they're primary sponsor on.
Yeah, and I did put in the chat the in-session phone number, which is 501-682 6211. And that's you can reach out to your rep using that phone number if it's during legislative session. And basically what happens is someone picks up the phone and says, "Hey," and you say, "Hey, I'd like to leave a message for my rep." And then they go, "Okay, who is your rep?" And you tell them your rep, and usually you just leave them a message and it shows up in this little like pink slip in the little mailbox that they go to when they check out. So that's another way to reach out to your rep that's not direct, but also a good way to make your voice heard.
Yeah, and I think I realized, Kevin, we only have the House phone line on our slides, but the slides Davis had at the beginning also had the Senate in session phone line. So if he's shared those slides, then you have it there. But also, both of those phone numbers should be on the House and Senate website that are linked at the top right of the legislatures page. Okay. Are there any questions about what we've talked about so far, or maybe we haven't covered?
I have one. Sorry. Sorry,
No,
it's
don't
always
be
me.
sorry, please.
Can y'all remind me, didn't we vote not that long ago on term limits for our legislators? And what are those?
Yeah, so um I find them a bit confusing. Um originally I think we voted for very specific term limits and I can't remember what the original number was. It got changed at least once, maybe twice, but at least once, and now it's like I mean it's only term limits in theory. It's a certain number of years for each. You can do Senate and House, and it's a certain number. I think it's like I want to say 6 terms in the House, which is what, 12 years? Yeah, and maybe it's a number divisible by 4 for the Senate. Um, but I think also if you wait, is it 4 years? If you wait a few years, you can go back. So it's term limited in that you can't just keep going over and over again. You at least have to take a break. But you can go from one house to the other, and that extends your time a little bit, or you can, like I said, you can take a break. We do. It's certainly different than it used to be. I mean, I think it used to be that it really was just the same people stayed in office for years and years, and now we do certainly have more of a, mix up, shake up every few years.
Yeah, I think the issue two changed that, and it, it it was 12 consecutive years with the opportunity to return after a 4 year break. You had to be gone for 4 years, and then you could come back for another one. So you could serve up to 16 years in a position.
Okay, maybe it's 16. Is it 16 the cap? Well,
Nah, I'm looking. I'm not sure.
okay.
Um,
Math is not my strong suit, and I remember finding that confusing, but I think we did a spreadsheet with all the representatives, and one of the things we noted was whether they were termed out this session. Sometimes legislators might be more willing to vote a way that they wouldn't normally if they're termed out because they're not worried about reelection.
Right. Yeah, I'm looking at a chart that says for representatives before 2014, it was 6 years. After 2014, current doesn't apply. But with the 2020 initiative, I'm not real sure about that one. But it says with the 2020 initiative for representatives it's 6 years, for senators 8 years, and the General Assembly combined a 10-year lifetime limit. So 10 years. I wonder if that's current. That there's a 10-year lifetime limit on if you're in either one.
I was thinking, go ahead, Kevin.
Sorry, I thought it was moving forward. So anyone before then was like grandfathered in or like started at technically zero. That's what I thought.
I was thinking they still had the 4-year break, but I could be wrong. I know Representative, I think it is Tracy Steele in North Little Rock. He has come back after a break of at least 4 years. He served, I don't know if it was the entire limit, but he certainly served several years in at least the House, maybe both. So
Hmm.
he is one of those people who took that break. I don't know if he did it deliberately. He also ran for mayor of North Little Rock and did some other things, but he is now back as representative in North Little Rock.
Yeah, I think ultimately, you know, uh, your voice matters and lawmakers work for us. And so even if you are in an area where maybe your rep doesn't really align with your values or your thoughts, I think it's always important that you reach out to them and make sure that you're heard. Because it's most likely, even if they don't vote like you'd like them to vote, it still has interest in mind on how your constituency matters to them, and ultimately it might be an issue for next time when they run. Um, and so I think, reaching out to your reps regardless is something super important. And I think bill tracking lets you do that at the right time, but you shouldn't just wait for a bill to run. You can also reach out to your reps and ask them, like, hey, is there something that can be done on this certain issue? And a lot of times reps do create bills because someone reached out to them and asked them to fix an issue or find a solution, or just generally just start to have conversation about a certain issue. So I think it's always good to reach out to your reps regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing we're our organizations are very nonpartisan in the sense that we're not advocating for a certain philosophy but there are some kind of general values that we all kind of accept. And part of it is that in a two-party system, when you don't have a situation where there can be actual debate over issues, where somebody can actually persuade someone to come over to another way of thinking and compromise is we've kind of everything has been kind of based in compromise over the years, and we've kind of seemed to with super majorities of either party we lose that concept of debating issues with a real clear kind of effort at getting information and letting that information drive how we find ways to cooperate and compromise. And I think that's what we just want the people to have an awareness of what are the rules, does the legislature operate and pass laws, and we have to be very honest and candid about what is reality for now. And sometimes that looks like we're taking a side when in reality we're stating just facts about what is being done without really saying that's right or wrong or whatever, but this is what's happening. And I think that's what we're working hard to do is make sure that we're sharing accurate information so that people feel empowered and feel like that they can go to the legislature, they can express their thoughts and feelings. And my experience over 20 years of working as an advocate for a nonprofit at the legislature is that the majority of the folks I've worked with up there over that time are very well meaning and very well intentioned, and they're there for the right reasons. They're there because they want to make a difference, so they want to affect outcomes of policies that affect their constituents, and they listen to their constituents. I wish I could say this is true for all of the folks that I've worked with up there, but it's not. And because of that, I think it's important that we be informed and aware and empowered to speak and have a voice to share those values and concerns that represent us, so that we can find legislators and elect legislators that do represent our values. And if that's not the case now, then our job is to know how the system works and to be able to actually work through the system and within the system to change it and grow it and expand it.
Thank you, Davis.
Yeah, I think that's all we have for you. We did leave some time at the very end for questions and answers. Uh, so if you guys have any questions, I know we went through a lot, but I we're welcome to answer any more questions and um, thoughts or concerns that you guys might have.
Yeah. Well, while you're thinking about it, we put our social media and our website up here. We do have a page, a legislative page where we track bills that we're concerned with. I'll just tell you our issues, are many. Constitutional rights, First Amendment, we deal with criminal justice reform, immigration, LGBTQ rights, voting and elections, voting rights, access to ballot issues, um, reproductive justice, racial equity. I'm sure I'm missing something, but most of what you will see tracked on our page is going to be bills that we oppose. I'll just tell you, we often don't endorse bills publicly because if certain members of the legislature hear that the ACLU supports a bill, they might vote against it just for that. So you won't see a lot of the bills we support necessarily on our page, but we do at least try to list the bills that we think are problematic and explain why. You can find similar things if there are other groups that align with your values. Arkansas Advocates for Children and Families do a lot, and I think they have a list on their page too, or on their social media at least, about bills that they're concerned with. They might even talk about bills they support. Um, the NAACP does similar things. Uh, Even some of the, well, now my mind is blank, but you may be able to find similar things with groups that you support.
So, what does the ACLU recommend we pay attention to right now while we're in session?
Yeah. Well, SB3 is a big one. Right now, there are several that we have listed as opposing. One is a bill that criminalizes squatting. Um, Generally, if something is criminalized that wasn't already criminalized, we are going to oppose it. Um, Especially if something like that, where we have trespass laws. This is likely to punish homeless people more than anything else. Um, but there are a bunch of bills like that that we oppose that may, they're not going to be the end of the world necessarily, or aren't maybe not as harmful as things like SB3 or some of the anti-LGBTQ bills we've seen in previous sessions. Um, that they have a lot of time still to do plenty of bad things. They Arkansas has passed a lot of anti-trans legislation. So my hope has been that that they're done doing that. That has taken up a lot of our space in the last few years. I think this session we're looking at anti-DEI stuff and maybe more censorship, both in public schools and at the higher education level. Um, we're very concerned about protecting immigrants. That's mostly a federal issue, but there are certainly things the state can do to make it easier or harder for immigrants.
I think there's going to be several bills. It looks like there already is more than one that are working hard to make the direct democracy process more difficult to exercise. There's no, they can't do away with direct democracy because it's in our Constitution. It would take a vote of the people to do that. But what they can do is continue to make the process of petition gathering and signature collection more and more difficult to exercise to where we can't actually get the work done in the amount of time that's given. So there's a bill out already that's compounding that issue and that we're very concerned about and we're paying attention to. And those are things that we think would definitely impede the people's progress and the people having a right to express their voice and pass their laws. So pay attention. I would really pay attention to bills like that that are going to limit our ability to have a voice as a people.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, last session I think it was the last session or the session before where they passed a bill. So previously you had to get signatures from across the state. You had to get at least so many signatures from the entire state, but you had to get a minimum number from 15 different counties, and it was based on the last governor's election. Um, Now they have upped that to at least 50 counties. You have to get a certain number of signatures in, which is extremely difficult and I mean, it was designed to make it either very difficult or impossible for people to pass initiatives. They were not happy. Many of our representatives with the minimum wage raise, for example, um, medical marijuana, and some of those things inspired them to make the process more difficult. That uh, piece is being challenged in court because they did that by statute. And it's the Constitution that says 15 counties. I think we would say at the ACLU that that's unconstitutional, but unfortunately, well, uh, it's the court. It's up to the courts to decide whether they agree with that or not. Um, but one thing they can do every session is refer three constitutional amendments out to be voted on by the people. Um, Again, I can't remember again if it was last session or the session before. Um, well, they did. They referred out a constitutional amendment also to make that process harder. And so it went on the ballot. And fortunately, I will say, Arkansans voted against it, which is why they did the statute change instead of the constitution change. But they may, Florida, for example, requires now that 60% of the people vote for a constitutional amendment in order for it to pass, which is a high bar. And so that's one possible change we might see proposed this year. But those things, like I said, have to go before the people for a vote. And so we certainly have a voice in that.
Think Amber had a couple questions. I think they were good, and so I just wanted to make sure we have time for her questions as well.
Yeah.
Amber, did you want
I
to?
had just pulled up, I was messing around with this and pulled up an SCR, which looked, wasn't the S or the H for so the SCR number 2, it's a concurrent resolution. And so Kevin mentioned that means it's more of a statement. I'm assuming, is it a statement by the Senate as a whole, or I mean, it's very inspirational.
Is
but
it okay? I always get the different types of resolutions mixed up. There's one that's going to be that's how they refer out constitutional amendments. And then I think the one you're looking at really is that's they pass yeah, to make a statement. It doesn't change law. But it's like well, I guess I don't know. A lot of legislative bodies do this. And that maybe was that the one by Tara Shepherd, or there are several. Sometimes they'll do, in honor of the Searcy High School football team for being the best ever. And those are like things that they do to, I mean, make their constituents happy, but like something good they can do for their district. And then sometimes it's more a stronger statement. And I know there was one filed, um, just a resolution saying that DEI is valuable, diversity, equity, inclusion is valuable. Um, that one is probably not going to pass, but yeah, I mean that's an example of one. And like I
yeah,
said, it doesn't change law. It just is like a
okay, that was the one I was curious.
okay,
It seems sort of counter to sort of the popular conversations going on. So thank you very
right, right. But yeah, I think that was the point. Um, yeah. Any
Any
other
other
questions?
questions? Right. I think we there's if there's no more questions, we'll give it back to you, Davis. You guys want to reach out to us? There's our website, our social medias. You're welcome to reach out anytime if you have any questions about bills. Might be a bill that we're tracking. And you're also welcome to sign up for our reminders and notifications about the bills that we are dealing with. I think other than that, thank you so much for being here, guys.
Absolutely. And thank you all. Thank Sarah and Kevin both for taking time out of the evening. I don't think this is their normal workday time. So I certainly appreciate them being willing to be with us tonight and share the information that's so important and getting us empowered to be able to actually express our voice and go to the legislature and hopefully make some change over time that lines up with our values and the ways that we want to see our policies enacted. Y'all remember there's other sessions to come. Uh, uh, the ARC Action, www.arcaction.net. That's our website. Go there anytime. We're expanding and continuing to work on it to get more information and resources there for you to empower you to help you. And we just appreciate you taking time to join us this evening and to empower yourselves. We need you. We need more folks like you who take an active role and are concerned to actually get involved, get engaged. If you know folks that could benefit from getting the information that we're trying to share, please direct them our way, direct them to our website so that we can hopefully get more folks involved and more folks engaged in the process. So thank you very much, and we'll be getting information back to you. I've got your email addresses, and we'll get back to you with a hopefully. I think that term limits thing was 12 years, and I think it's still you if you lay out 4 years, you can come back. But I'm not. We're going to find out for sure and let you know. But thanks again for being here, and thanks to ACLU. We appreciate y'all more than you know.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. It was wonderful.